That's just sneaky as all get out, isn't it?
Okay, a couple things about that video. First of all, those of you who know me and know the budget that I turned in for the Secretary of State's office was less than the budget that the Secretary of State turned in 1987, unadjusted for inflation. Knows that I did not pay for actors. Those were real Hoosiers, and more importantly, those were real legislative districts that the Warshak test was made out of. And so we're going to quickly highlight some of the issues, quickly give you the solutions, and then certainly turn this over to my friend the Sheriff of Lake County. Here we go, Alex. First big problem. Communities are split. This is Frankton, Indiana. This is a town of 2,000 people. They have 2 legislators, and the district goes right down the middle of East Clyde Street, which is the middle of town. There's no logical reason for this to look this way. Next. Same for Rockport, Indiana, a town of 2,000 people. That's down by the Ohio River. There are hundreds of examples like this in the state. Next slide. This is Morristown, Indiana. This is in Shelby County. These are 2 congressional districts. The top one is Dan Burton, and the bottom one is Mike Pence. They have a parade. I've been to it. It's called the Derby Days Parade. Next time I go, I'm going to look for Congressman Burton and Pence. And I'm going to see if one of them waves to one side of the street only, and the other one waves to the other side of the street, because with this district they could. This is not about any particular office holder, candidate, or any legislative leader. This is about a process that needs to be fixed in all seriousness. And that is a terrible way to draw a map, because it divides people that have the same interest and same geography. Congressional District 8, this is in South, West Indiana and West Indiana. Sheriff and I know this district well. The top of that district is a county called Warren County. It is a closer drive to Milwaukee from Warren County than it is to the bottom of the same district. The second problem is that districts in this state meander and sprawl through the countryside like an Indiana Sunday drive. Congressional District 4 was Monticello. Remember I said I went to all 92 counties every year. I feel I know the people of Monticello a little bit, and I know the people of Bedford, and I can tell you they have nothing in common except, of course, being good Hoosiers. There's no reason they should be in the same legislative congressional district. Next slide. Competition. There's the facts. 40% of all legislative races lack major party opposition because they use political data, because they are protecting their incumbent addresses. They don't want to run against each other, so they draw the districts through backyards, down streets, so they're not in the same district with each other. Half House districts favor a party by more than 30%. Imagine that. Half of the House districts in this state, if you were to run in one of the House districts, you would either have a 30-point advantage immediately based on vote history, or you would have a 30-point disadvantage immediately based on people's vote history. It's true, the General Assembly votes on the maps, but it's really 4 or 5 people, the legislative leaders or their appointees, who actually sit in a back room away from the public's view and draw these maps, and that has to change. As a result, it's no surprise that Senate leaders were opposed only 5 out of 16 times this decade. House leaders, only 19 out of 32 times, and that's both Republican and Democrat. What they think? They think you don't care. This is Hamilton County, Indiana. Hamilton County has 3% of the Hoosier population, yet it has 9 House districts. Worse yet, the districts, as you can see, meander through the land, regardless of where the township is, regardless of where the cities are. The arrow is pointing to the township lines, and you can see that the maps don't respect those known community boundaries. The best way in a place for Indiana to respect communities of interest, to respect compactness, is to follow known boundaries. You basically know what county you're in. You know what city or township you're in. The district should follow those very same lines to reduce confusion. By the way, Hamilton County also has 5 senators, which is 10% of the Senate, yet only 3% of the population. Solution: keep communities of interest together. 21 states have this. Compactness, 36 states require that in their law. Follow known community boundaries like counties and townships and cities, that's 44 states. And the moose in the room on the table, no political data for partisanship. No use of incumbent addresses. And with technology and computer programs these days, it's very easy to see a map that protects an incumbent, to see a subdivision or a homeowners association drawn in or out of a district because of the way they voted in the past. Very easy to do. We would prohibit, whether it's felony status or otherwise, the use of partisanship, political data for partisanship. So this is not just a conceptual speech. We actually hired a map drawer to go ahead and draw some concept maps about what this would look like 10 years ago if we would have followed the 4 criteria. And really quickly, there's Congress as it exists today. There's what could have been. Immediately you see more compactness. You see counties followed. We took it from 12 counties being intersected on the left to 2 on the right. 20 townships on the left were intersected. We got that down to 2 on the right. Next slide. House of Representatives. Looks like a jigsaw puzzle. We were able to really clean that up. We halved the number of counties that were intersected, and we took the township intersections down to 0 in the map on the right, just following the 4 criteria. Next map is the Senate map. There's Shrek, or the alligator, from the video. And look how we were able to clean that up. Look how the alligator goes away, and all of a sudden county and township lines are followed. We've proven that this could be done, so the legislators now have no excuse. And boy, are they mad at me. Right? Means we're doing something right, I think. Added benefit, real quickly, called nesting. We can do this in Indiana because we have 100 senators and we have 100 representatives and half a number of senators. I'll show you what that looks like under our map. This is southeastern Indiana. That's the Senate district in our map. That's what we would have proposed 10 years ago using the data from 2000. That's the representative district. Look, it's the same shape. So that means if you know who your representative is, you automatically every time will have the same senator. So imagine how less confusing that would be. If you're in a county, you know who your congressman in Washington is because of just simply because you live in the county. That would happen most of the time. That would happen 99% of the time. And then if you know what township or city you're in, and you know who your representative is, you automatically every time will know who your senator is. Which means you can get a hold of them easier. So you can commend them, or throttle them, or communicate with them however you want. That's what a democracy is, that's what a republic is, and that's what we need to get to here in the state of Indiana. Remember I told you about the bet going on at the State House. The bet is that you don't care. So we're trying to prove them wrong. In order to do that, we need your comments. You're here on a Saturday afternoon like I alluded to, because besides any other addictions or afflictions, you have your leaders. You have spheres of influence in your families, at your job, those that you work for, those that work for you, and you're needed in this state. This group is needed in this state to make a difference. If you go to rethinkingredistricting.com, I can get you to an email to your legislator directly, based on what your zip code is. You put in your name, put in your zip code, you can communicate directly with your legislator and show them that we do care. We've already got 400 letters in. We got thousands of hits to this website. Keep going out to the website page. There we go. That's the website. Go back one. Thanks, Alex. rethinkingredistricting.com. And then from time to time, we're going to ask you to write them again. And we're going to keep this issue in the forefront for the next year, year and a half. Get some legislation in place. And even if we don't get legislation in place, when it comes time to draw the maps, because it's the Wild West, just as they've been doing the wrong thing over the years, they can now do the right thing if we keep the public pressure on. Thank you very much. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you very much, Todd. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Sheriff Dominguez. Sure, go ahead and ask your question.
I think what you said is really amazing because I don't know how many people knew about it. It's not that we don't care, we just don't know. Is it, I mean, has it been in the newspaper, this sort of thing with the map of, you know, like current and proposed districting so that people have an idea?
It's been in the paper. When I launched this at the Indianapolis Rotary Club, they put side-by-side maps. And so we're getting attention. No one's ever done this before and taken this to the people, and that's what I'm, as Secretary of State and Chief Election Officer, that's what I'm committed to do. The comment back from the legislative leadership was terrible, and it was publicly terrible. I didn't expect it. He said, this is none of his business. This is not his role. And that may be. I don't have a vote in this, and I don't draw the maps myself. But again, I'm the Chief Election Officer. But more importantly than that, their comment is a comment to you. Because if they're saying that I don't care, they're saying that you all don't care, and that's none of your business. That's what they're saying.
And just so we have a chance to have the sheriff speak, we're going to have time for questions, but I did want to give the sheriff a chance to introduce himself. This is Sheriff Roy Dominguez. For those of you that don't know, the sheriff is from Lake County, and he has done a lot for Muslims in Lake County. He's greatly respected in that community. We welcome you. We are honored that you join us, and if you could say a few words, please.
Well, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. How was that? No? Closer, closer, closer. Wow, all right. Let me first introduce my wife who is with me, Betty Oleda Dominguez. Let me tell you how blessed I am. And thank you each and every one of you for allowing me to be here. I'm honored. Also with me is one of our good friends, Dan Foote. Dan Foote is here from Indianapolis. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. Mr. Secretary of State, it's always an honor to see you and to be with you and to be on a same forum with you. He's a great guy. He really is. Other than being a Bears fan, he'd be all right. No, actually, we're both from Lake County, and I'm a Colts fan, and so I'm one of the minorities in Lake County being a Colts fan. So at that same time when they played the Super Bowl, I was in a room about maybe 26 people, and me and 2 other people were Colts fans. No need to tell you who was cheering at the end of the day. But thank you very, very much. I am the sheriff of Lake County, and I'm honored to be the sheriff. And we've done a number of different things as sheriff. I'm also a lawyer. I graduated from Valparaiso University School of Law in 1982. I'm a former Indiana State Trooper. I was a state trooper here in the state of Indiana. I was back in 1976. I went to the police academy, was a state trooper here in our great state. Also, when Governor Bayh was the governor of the state of Indiana, I was chairman of the Workers' Compensation Board, and I was with the Workers' Compensation Board for about 14 years. And I'm currently, I have 15 months left in my second term as sheriff. Mr. Orquita and I are, by the Indiana Constitution, have term limits. We're allowed to run for 2 terms. Each term has 4 years, and we're both concluding our respective second terms. I believe he at the end of next year as well. Yep. Both of us will conclude our second term at the end of next year. And he, like I, both of us, have great admiration for our Secretary of State. Truly, he's a good man, believes in public service, as I do. Both family individuals and believe in our family and our community, our respect for each and every one of us. And we know that everybody is important. Everybody counts. Each and every one of you, we congratulate you for being here this afternoon. Congratulate the Alliance for hosting this conference here today, because it is so, so important that we do this. When he mentioned that people will believe that you don't care, that's why we're here. We're asking you to care. Because when we care, all of us care, we can make a better society and a greater charity to all. We know that, and that's our mission in life, is to provide assistance to those in need. Not only to those who may have a greater need, but to all in need. Those whether we're helping orphans and widows, but all where we can give charity to our entire society, we really lead a better life. And then later on Judgment Day, we'll be asked what we have done, and hopefully we can turn to have led a life in promoting charity and also promoting diversity. When we promote diversity, we promote the greatness of our society. We promote a better society, because with diversity we get divergent opinions and perspectives. We get divergent ways of looking at things so that we can become better. I heard the good professor here talk a few minutes ago about the absolutist and the modernist. And you know, before she left, I asked her, I wanted to ask, I said, can an absolutist live in peace? And she said, only if the absolutist is willing to change. And I think that is, for me, I think that is true. Every day I try to change. Every day I try to become better than yesterday, so that we can have a better harmony. Our faith from God tells us to live in harmony with our environment. Let me give you an example. When I believe that when we plant and we, with God, provide subsistence and provide assistance, that plant will grow. And that plant will give much fruit. And that fruit is what we hope to endeavor by giving by way of charity. By helping others will produce fruit. And so that when we do that, we are living in harmony with our environment. Let me bring that to diversity. When we help promote diversity, we are providing for greater ideas, greater harmony, greater effort for change. The absolutist, whether in whatever cause it may be, whether it's a religious or political view, the absolutist will not be able, as I see it, to have our society believe in a one world order. There will always be conflict. But when we make room for everybody, when we promote in public service diversity, when we promote in public service an opportunity for all, when we promote in public service equality, when we promote in public service justice, when we promote in public service, I as sheriff, security for all, then we have a better society. Then we are planning those things that are in concert with nature and its environment. And we can live by those, you know. God has provided us with a great example, and that's our environment and our nature. When we take care of that, and when we live by that, we can continue to grow. The absolutist, as I would see it, would be firmly in the past. We cannot live, I believe, firmly in the past. We should honor our past. We should revere our past as our guidance toward the future. You know, some of the challenges that you face, I have faced. Some of the challenges that you will face, I will face. I don't need to tell you that coming from a minority community as a Hispanic, the immigration issue is a big issue for all of us. And ensuring that everybody understands that those of us who look a little different are just as American and just want to have a better society and a better life for us all. That we have hopes and dreams just like everybody does. And that we too want to promote peace. But those of us like you and me, that if we don't participate, then those who believe in the absolutist and don't think that a change in society is good for us will have succeeded. And so that it requires those of us, despite what the title might be, and I like the way the good professor mentioned the different titles, whether it was a modernist, a pluralist, a liberalist, someone who is liberal. I don't know that sometimes Democrats and Republicans are called liberal and conservatives, but I think that titles many times will help divide. Titles such as immigration, titles such as you know, racial profiling. I try to make sure that our officers are given sensitivity training and cultural diversity, that we respect all. I can tell you that at our local mosque, and having gone with our imam and for prayer and festivity and gone to their family day as a visitor, I can tell you that on the family day, both the imam at our mosque there in Maryville were there in the dunking tank, and everybody had an equal opportunity to either be able to dunk the imam or dunk me as well.
So which one that?
Yeah, I don't know, we didn't keep count. Although there was a long line for both of us. And so those things that you will face, such as racial profiling, I'm quite aware. My folks were migrant workers. Migrant workers are those who work out in the fields and are very poor. And I can tell you that me and my family were given much charity and much assistance. There are many, many great and giving human beings from all walks of life. From all walks of life we've been assisted. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to give. My folks, I can recall when law enforcement back a few decades ago, if you were a Hispanic and you were driving on the road, you were stopped. Maybe you were perceived for a number of different things and or maybe given a hard way to go. I know that in many instances, members of your community have felt the same way. We didn't like it. You don't like it. Mr. Rakita doesn't like it either. No one likes that. Those of us who believe that respect for everybody doesn't like it. That's why it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to promote equality and justice and to do those things. I can also tell you that in many, many instances in our department, that were those who believe that that maybe we shouldn't provide assistance to others are just simply wrong. During the 9/11, when I became sheriff in 2003, I, along with other law enforcement officials, went to our mosque there in Maryville with the imam and said prayer. And we also broke bread and had an opportunity to enjoy each other's company. The news media was there, and the reason that I brought members of the law enforcement community, whether it was the local police, the federal agencies, was to let those who would believe that members of the Muslim community were not protected, we wanted them to know that we were here to protect our brothers and sisters, that we were here to protect them. The year before I became sheriff, the mosque in Maryville had been shot a couple of times, and they had bullet holes in some of the windows and in the wall, and they left it there. And the imam had talked about that. And so when I became sheriff, we, for a number of years, made sure that we were there before 9/11 every year to ensure that others would know that we're there to provide protection, and that we will diligently pursue those who would violate and create violence upon members of our community. There was one time when one of our citizens was killed, a member of the Muslim community, and we made sure that our law enforcement community was there to investigate aggressively as to who had committed the murder. I must say that we were unable to determine and bring charges of the person who killed this one individual. Although it's a very complex case, I can say that we made sure that we investigated to the best of our ability, using all the resources necessary. And as sheriff, I would make sure that our department is available to everybody and that we provide protection to us all. And so as we move forward, you know, you're here, and it's a testament to your desire to live a great life. And that is that because while we move forward in the future, we could never surrender or never feel comfortable that things are okay, that things won't change. Things change all the time. Things change because we make it happen. Things change because we want it to change. Things change because we want justice and equality for all. Our Congressman, Andre Carson, many decades ago wouldn't believe that maybe someone of Muslim faith would never have become a congressman. A local judge, our local judge here, David Shaheed, also, maybe a decade ago, those would be those who would say he would never have been elected. I can tell you that there are those, my name is Rogelio Dominguez. In English, they call me Roy. There was a time when I ran for sheriff, and they said, "Hey, Roy, let me tell you, people of the non-minority community are not going to vote for a guy named Rogelio Dominguez. They can't even pronounce your name, let alone vote for you. And people are generous, people are charitable, but because they get to know you, as we get to know each other, we can move to a more prosperous and giving future. And so I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your involvement. We together can make sure that we stand up for a more progressive society, a more giving society, as we give charity to all. And assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. It's my understanding too that both of you may be running for the governor's position in the next election. Is that correct? Am I wrong? Am I right?
Well, let me not hesitate. That is absolutely true.
Okay.
And having said that,
I've never been known to hesitate, but I have 14 months left in my term, and I absolutely I love this service. If I'm to announce on the web right now and to you all that I'm running for governor, I'd have to talk to my wife first because we have not talked about that.
That's okay. Well, then my question to you is this, Secretary. The question that I thought of as you were speaking is, the audience before you today is not just Indiana citizens, but they're Muslim Hoosiers, and they're people of faith, and they've come here to talk about the issues that they're concerned about with Indiana's politicians. As you look into this audience and look into the people that comprise Indiana's Muslim population, is there a message that you would give us, specifically Indiana's Muslims, about the future and what they can expect from their local government in the next couple of years?
Well, thank you for that. You mentioned that they've come, that you all come to talk about issues. I want to hear them. I want to get to the questions and answers because that's where I think I can lead best as Secretary of State. You don't lead by talking, you lead by listening in a lot of ways. So I will be brief. But having said that, yeah, as I go to all of the counties, I see the diversity. But regardless of what our ethnic background may be, and I agree with everything Roy's saying about justice and equality and making sure that we have all those equities here in the state. What does that best are groups like this. I don't think that the first turn for assistance in all this should be the government. I think it has to be us as Hoosiers. I mean, that's the adjective. It's not a rush to government to do this for us. That's what a lot of the rest of the world does, and I think to their detriment. And I'm becoming scared that, again, regardless of our ethnicity, that some of that's starting to take hold here. And Hoosiers have a remarkable spirit, and we rely upon ourselves and we rely upon each other. And I think, I hope, maybe I'm misunderstanding, you guys can tell me differently, but I thought that's what the Muslim community also did.
Out of everyone in the audience, if you own a small business, run a small business, or know someone who does, would you raise your hand? Sheriff, as someone who's running for governor, could you say a few words about how you would address the important issues affecting small business owners?
well, I haven't announced a candidacy for governor. And currently what I am doing is exploring the possibilities of running for governor. I hope to make a decision here in the next few months or so. But I have currently going around the state, going throughout the state of Indiana on a listening tour. I think I may have passed out some of my cards in which I'm asking you to log on to our website. Dan, do we have to log on to our website and to give us your thoughts and maybe some of your responses to our questions. But in relation to small businesses, and this is probably where our great Secretary of State, he really is, he's a great guy, and we have a wonderful time with each other in terms of kidding around and an opportunity to see each other. This is probably where we diverge. We diverge on a way of what we believe government should interact in our community. We don't diverge by the fact or our passion for a greater society. because I truly believe in that too. The fact that we have different views doesn't mean that we don't believe in the same greatness of tomorrow. But I would believe that government can assist and has assisted small businesses. One of the ways that government can assist small businesses is by lowering its taxes. One of the ways that government can assist small businesses is by providing grants to ensure that small businesses continue to grow, continue to prosper, and continue to provide assistance as you, as small business owners, employ our Hoosiers, then that helps us all. So I believe that government can assist in those things. One of the things that government assists in small businesses is what Mr. Rokito, our Secretary of State, was promoting here today, is redistricting. Because when you can have your representative from your specific area more, how could you say, more attuned to the issues facing you within your community, that helps small businesses. So government is able to do that. Lower taxes, less regulation, greater representation, more money for grants, more infrastructure. If you have a business and no infrastructure, we know the detriment of what that could be. So I believe that government can do that, and government can best help when it serves its people. And by having elected representatives, it's incumbent upon all of us, to vote and to vote intelligently. For whatever party it may be, or whatever that the title the person has, that you vote for the person whom you believe will assist you and assist our community. Government is here. Government will be here, and government will provide assistance. So we got to make sure that it serves its people.
I have an honest question from the audience. You did not vote in the last election. Honestly. If you did not vote, it's okay. If you did not vote in the last election, raise your hand. I know more than one person did not vote. You can raise your hand. It's okay if you don't. The question for Secretary is, of the people who did not vote, how will you earn these votes? What will you do if you run again or decide to run for another office? What is important for politicians or for secretaries of state or anyone at city or local government? What do you appeal to in trying to earn the votes of your constituents?
Well, first of all, let me say, as a candidate who's been in 2 statewide elections now, that you have to get your message out. And in a modern age, to get your message out is pretty expensive. And so there's a lot of feeling nationally, and Indiana has kept it at bay. A lot of feeling nationally, though, to curtail your free speech. And one of the ways that your free speech is curtailed is by restricting who you want to support and giving money. That's an issue of free speech for many of us. So it's important. You mentioned you didn't know about redistricting. That's a government issue, but it's also a campaign. It's not a political campaign, but it's a campaign in that sense, and that costs money. It costs money to reach people when their lives are very busy. There's a lot of things to do. Sometimes 2 jobs. If not, evening TV and family to take care of. All those things compete for our time. So, in a free society, though, in a republic, one of the core responsibilities of a participant in that republic is the personal responsibility to keep in tune of the issues, to know these things. Now, just because you raised your hand that you didn't vote didn't mean you didn't make a political expression. You can make a very strong political expression by not voting. That's recognized. It's not the preferred way. As Indiana's chief election officer, I'd rather have your vote count for whoever you decide. Or if it's a situation between the lesser of 2 evils, still a decision is necessary in order to keep this republic. Benjamin Franklin, when he left Constitutional Hall, after he just helped write the Constitution of this great nation, was approached by a lady. And that lady said, "Sir, what kind of government have you given us?" And he quickly replied, "Ma'am, we've given you a republic if you can keep it." And that's That's what it comes down to. For me as chief election officer, we have to make sure the process exists for you, that it's fair, that it's accurate. And in Indiana, it is. You have 5,500 precincts. You can basically fall out of bed into a precinct in the state. 30,000 poll workers. We can start voting 30 days before the election. You vote absentee, voting in person has to be early. You can mail in a ballot for any number of reasons. So we feel the process is there. But at some point, that's a two-way street. And the other side of that street is the personal responsibility to participate.
I agree with Todd that it's a personal responsibility to participate. Because if you don't assist us to provide a better society in this country, voting, people have given their lives, have died for the opportunity for all of us to have an opportunity to vote without barriers. And the reason for that is because we get to pick our representatives. We all select those who would best serve its people. And when you don't assist us in doing that, then maybe we get people who are not as passionate about public service. You know, our Secretary of State and I come from different political affiliations. But at the end of the day, when it comes time and the voters have decided who is going to be the representative, we work together for the best of the people, what is for good government. And so when you don't vote, then sometimes that, you'll be surprised how closely the elections have come to people who have maybe one vote per precinct. I ran for sheriff the first time in 1994 and wasn't successful. If 3 persons in each precinct had voted for me, I would have won. I would like to have thought that maybe I've done a lot better than the other candidate in terms of my ability or my passion to serve. We've had other elections in which we've heard of elections where they are tied, or where we've heard where a candidate turned to their family members and said, "What did you mean? What do you mean you didn't vote for me? It was tied. If you would have voted for me, I would have won." And so every vote counts. Every vote is very important. Every vote helps us, I believe, to promote our form of government.
Thank you so much. I'd like to hear from the audience on some thoughts they have, sir. Mr. Nutter, go ahead.
Yeah, Razin Alim. I've worked with Mr. Milans in Indiana for a few years, and last year, during the October timeframe, elections were coming up, we had the voter registration campaign, and we estimated we registered about 1,000 Muslim voters, right, in time to vote for the election. Excuse me. And if you look at the number of Muslim voters statewide who are registered and voted, many of the margins in the state were smaller than that number. So I think it was very likely that the votes of the Muslims in Indiana had a significant effect on the outcomes of many elections. I have just a small question for the Secretary Rokita. We have in the state a requirement for a rigorous registration process that I was involved in last year with many of the voters, and we also require a signature, but now we require a photo ID, which I believe is only in Indiana at this time. Could you talk about why you think that is necessary, absent any evidence that there is fraud in the absence of photo ID?
Yeah, thank you. First, let me say thanks for registering as a third party, registering all those voters. And congratulations to you. Third-party registration drives, I think, are very important in a free society. You don't want the government doing all that. You want third parties to do it and to help with it. You want them to be responsible. And from all indications, the Muslim Alliance did it responsibly, unlike some other third-party organizations that are in the news and that are being investigated right now because they're working the opposite way from what you did. So thank you, and thank you for doing it correctly, responsibly. Secondly, with regard to photo ID, there's 2 misconceptions with your question. First of all, there is evidence of fraud, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not you believe fraud exists It's how much confidence you have in the process. And the argument with photo ID, and the second misconception of your question, by the way, is that there's a lot more than one state that have photo ID requirements. And there are more every day. We got the last check from our office, we had 25 legislators from different states call us to get a copy of our bill so we can introduce an exception. And the reason all that is because if you lose confidence in the system because you, for real, saw your vote get diluted, or it's perceived that your vote is getting diluted, and you stop believing in it. If you stop believing in it, you stop coming. And that's when we run into the Franklin problem of losing the republic. So that's why photo ID there, we went all the way to the United States Supreme Court with it. And because it was reasonably written and narrowly crafted with good exceptions where they were merited, warranted, it passed. Now, there was a separate suit that was just filed in the state court by the League of Women Voters, and it didn't apply to the federal United States, the United States Constitution. It applied to our state constitution. And our state constitution is a little bit different wording. It's more specific wording than our Equal Protection Clause in our U.S. Constitution. And the appellate court, in an interim standpoint, found that it failed our state constitution. And we've immediately sought transfer to the Supreme Court for clarification. So the law in Indiana has not changed. I look forward to the Supreme Court looking at that issue. Because the logic, this is my opinion as an active attorney in this state, the logic that the appellate court used for our state constitution would really unravel a lot of the state programs we have. Our state constitution says that everyone has to be treated equally when it comes to a government program. So that means my 19-month-old son, under that logic, it was to be taken literally, when he becomes old enough to go to school, would automatically get a free lunch, even though he didn't need one, even though he could otherwise afford it. Because otherwise, it's a program, and you wouldn't be treating people equally. That's the exact same argument the appellate court used, and I'm looking forward, hopefully, to it getting reversed.
Yes, sir.
Todd, if I may ask, regarding the fraud, do you have any special force set up now, especially after the capital market meltdown, regarding the investment banks and the case similar like we heard about Madoff? And I know you're short-handed at times in the staff and security analysis division, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to take your opinion.
I'll quickly answer securities rather than turn over to the sheriff, who might have some fraud stories of his own. We're chasing people out of perfectly good airplanes these days. I never thought I'd be doing things like that. We're very aggressive when it comes to going after that. We have some criminal enforcement powers to do that. And we've really beefed up the securities division. When my predecessors ran the division, we didn't have any former prosecutors, any litigation attorneys. We didn't even have forensic specialists. We have all that now. That's not a comment on them. That's just how the industry has changed over the years. And so, we're on that. But in every case, when you're talking about fraud, even though we've got $51 million of restitution ordered and 300 years of jail time, we're talking about pennies on the dollar because it's always after the fact. So what we're trying to do at Secretary of State's office is educate losers before they're wrongfully separated. And so you might see a TV and radio campaign that we have out, not paid for by tax dollars, paid for by the fines we collect from the bad guys. And just to educate losers, IndianaInvestmentWatch.com is an interactive website. You can do budgeting there. You can have a search engine to look up your broker, see if they have a good record or not. Do all those things to protect yourself before you give your money over.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary of State. And get to the part about the ID, if I may. This is probably more than likely maybe a discussion that, Lord willing, that Mr. Rokita and I will be discussing maybe 2 years from now.
I like that plug-in.
I'll get ready.
But there's a lot to that, and he's right. The Indiana Supreme Court will be looking at that. And just briefly, I think that they were just simply saying that the genesis of the whole ID was to prevent fraud. And in the basis of that, quite frankly, it started in our county, in Lake County, was that there was fraud in the absentee ballot. And so, but the photo ID doesn't go to those who would vote, who are going to vote absentee ballot, but those who are required to present a photo ID if you're going to go and vote in person. So if the purpose was to prevent fraud on the absentee ballot, the photo ID doesn't go to that. But, and therefore, it treats two voters, or rather, a class of voters, differently, and that it violates the Indiana Constitution. We'll see what the Indiana Supreme Court says. There'll be advocates on both sides presenting their views. We have a very distinguished judicial members of our Indiana Supreme Court, who, as well as we do in all of our courts, that will be specifically the Indiana Supreme Court, who will be looking at that issue and making, I'm sure, a decision probably within, well, I would think that that's a resolution that will probably within the next 6 months, would you say?
Yeah, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah,
hopefully by
yeah.
then, because we have elections coming up, so
Yeah.
one way or the other, we have to know.
And I just think that in terms of the process, once it's transferred, they receive it, briefs are submitted to the Indiana Supreme Court, but not to have oral argument. Maybe just that process might take somewhere right around 6 months, give or take a few months, and things of that nature, and we'll see what happens. But in terms of fraud, our Secretary of State is absolutely correct. We must be diligent in preventing fraud in terms of investment and also in the criminal aspects, because if we can do it better in prevention, then we can hopefully help others not lose their money. Because many times the criminal justice system is probably not as well suited to try to recuperate a dollar for dollar of loss for fraud, but rather maybe sometimes maybe pennies into a dollar, maybe a quarter to the dollar. Because the criminal justice system is set up to apprehend criminals and punishment, but not necessarily a recoupment of your money that is lost due to fraud. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes the person who gets the money and who has perpetrated the fraud has spent all the money and there's no money to get, and you try to get something as well as jail time. So our best, whether it's in the Sheriff's Department, Secretary of State, is to try to provide information to prevent fraud at the beginning, get you information, and also to try to catch the perpetrators when they've done it or beforehand.
Any questions or concerns from the sisters at all? Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, back to the economic situation. You know, as a Muslim, my family, we don't deal in interest, either taking or giving. We never had a mortgage on our home. We built our own house with our hands. Like, we go through a lot of sacrifice not to use any debt, any mortgage, anything. Yet in this crisis, all our investments, all my retirement accounts, I mean, they all fell like everybody else's, you know. And when I think that here I am within a system that I can't help but participate in, although I stay out of debt, the whole thing is crumbling because of people just raking in money off of debt. You know, so they're living high on the hog, even people buying houses that can't afford them. And then I'm the one to end up suffering. No matter how much we want to try and follow our Islamic principles, we still lose along with everybody else because of something even we don't participate in. So I don't know, and I haven't seen the federal government yet decide all they've done. I'm still not seeing that they're making changes to prevent any of this. And I don't know if the state can start to initiate any of their own kind of things that would, you know, at least make one bank where to say, here, this bank is not going to deal in anything but just keep your money and send it back. And, yeah.
Sister?
Yeah, that's it.
Did everyone hear that, or should I paraphrase that? Okay, basically, the Muslim belief is not to go into debt.
Yeah.
And here you are living so responsibly throughout your life, that you suffer along with America generally because of the high debt we have, public and private, and those things that we're going through. And what can the state of Indiana do, or what have we done? First of all, I think you're right on, and I think we have a serious problem here. Folks think that America and Indiana is going to come out of this recession because we came out of every other one. Before, during every other recession, America was creditor to the world. Now we're debtor to the world. So I think this is not going to be the same as all other times. And really we have little, I think, personal opinion, valid excuse for being deader in the world right now. Absolutely, yes, we should reduce taxes. I believe in small government, and that's one way government assists. I agree with Sheriff Dominguez there. But at the same time, there was talk about grants. Well, what's been happening for over a generation now is that sometimes taxes would be lowered, but we would raise our debt level because we didn't have the courage enough to also stop the grants. We have not been living within our public means for at least one, probably more generations in this country. And it has put us in an inferior position to the rest of the world. And when you combine that with our trade imbalance, that we consume more and take in more from other countries than we produce for other countries, that even worsens it. The state of Indiana, under our Constitution, has got to have a balanced budget. We cannot go far into debt. That should be the rule for Congress. That should be the rule for our federal government. And once we're able to force it, it might take a constitutional amendment. I really don't know how other way to have Congress stop spending our children's future than a constitutional amendment, or only vote for people that promise to not have us go further in debt.
There's a lot to that. In terms of further in debt, or what we as Democrats recently received from the previous administration, it required everybody's participation. And you're right, even though as we marshal what we would do in our home, we must also be very diligent in watching what goes in the world around us, because it affects us so much. I mean, the bailout with the banks and on, and how that affected us, the housing market and things of that nature, and the interest rates, and you know, I certainly congratulate you in trying to, not trying, but what you did in terms of building your home and staying debt-free and things of that nature. Our society in general has a different view in terms of debt and its lifestyle. And what we have come to find out is that we, here in the United States, has been one of the most, wealthiest countries in the world. Now find itself as a better country, and now trying to recover. And how do we do that at the same time to provide greater assistance to those who find themselves trying to make sure that we progress forward. Unemployment amongst our society is important to us all. Some might say, well, everybody in my family, they went to school, they got jobs, they're professionals, they're doing this and that. So the unemployment, well, that's somebody else's problem. But I tell you why it's all of our problems. Because when people don't finish school, there's a high percentage of students who are not graduating from high school. And so if they don't graduate from high school and are unable to get a job, and even further unable to get a job, even if they were educated, but even without an education, sometimes these youngsters will turn, not necessarily youngsters, young adults will turn to crime. And when they turn to crime, they're going to turn to those of us and try to commit violence upon us and our loved ones. And so as we stay attuned to all of those issues, we must be participants in all of those issues, even when it may not affect us directly, because ultimately it does. And as I mentioned earlier about our environment and how God has given us that example, that if we don't nurture every aspect of it together, that the lack of resources to one will not bear fruit to us all. And so it's important that we continue to do that. And so, but I congratulate you on all that you have done, and thank you for being here and all the things that you have done.
It won't happen.
In one word, do you think the recession is over? The worst of the recession is over? Yes or no? Mr. Secretary?
I'm not pressing.
Okay, Sheriff, yes or no?
That was more than one
hope it's on its way.
Okay, I know Lisa had a question, go ahead, Lisa.
Just with Robert, my father, was working on, I'm from Canadian, but I can vote, but you know why I can vote? It's because your immigration laws are flawed. I've been in this country 15 years, living in different places, my father died, so my father voted for you, and then he was your your government system, and lots of immigration is so I'm Canadian, I can vote, but I'm more active than most people that generally speak of public schools because Benjamin Franklin speak of advanced economics, and that's not true. So I would ask, how do you look at the immigration issues in the state of Indiana? A letter would be written to the I knew that. And so, no, I knew that. So I'm wondering what you think are going to do with that. And I'm familiar with that. The gentleman who was murdered in Barrow was one of the family members. And that was, in my opinion, sad. When you say inclusivity, so that's immigration, that's wonderful. What are you doing in the state of Indiana? The people who want to be here, well, everybody jumping the fence to get into this country, well, people who are legally building green buildings in your country. I'm an architect, building all over this country, and I can't get here because my activism is stopping me because they're putting me in homeland security. What are you really doing?
Sheriff, why won't you let Lisa come in?
So, no, it speaks to the inclusivity, because your history museums is really important, because I don't challenge you at all to respect, but the system here, the museums, everything we learn in all our educational systems, if you want us to be inclusive as Muslims and be part of the fabric of this society, our youth, our children, in our educational system, in our school, our museums, and what they see up there, there's no Muslims, they're Mohammedans. It's still an Orientalist viewpoint. How can you bring that change in every district from Allen County to Walton, anywhere I'm coming here from, but with Indian Mountains? And every county in the state of Indiana doesn't have indexed history museum very much about Muslim persons. And then you get the Klux Klan, Elwood, Swayze, Indianapolis, if you murder, as you know, half of the women, you're brutally raped, you're murdered, you're dead. So the third point is that leads to God's environment that we learn in very curriculum, that the green sustainability mandate, what are you doing with the environment to bring in, as an example, that platter that we learned from how we preserve and what rebates and incentives are given by the government as well in each of the districts and the state for individual and small businesses and restaurants to promote that finance. So it's kind of threefold.
It's a three-part question. The first part was immigration in Indiana. The second part was Muslim arts and culture in Indiana. And the third part was cleaning. Sheriff, do you want to start off with the first part, and then we'll have the secretary continue?
Well, immigration is important to us all. And both Mr. Keita and I will be here all as we all can appreciate and have a conference solely on immigration. But let me say this, my philosophical view on this, let me see if I can sum it up in three parts. As my parents were from Mexico, I know full well the issue of immigration. My grandparents came here. My grandmother didn't become a naturalized citizen until she was the age of 82. And they came here and know the feeling of legal and illegal status. My folks were migrant workers. And so we know full well the racial profiling have been subjected to that. And I understand all that because I didn't like it for my family, don't like it for anybody else. Won't tolerate it. And the second point to that is that I agree with Indiana Senator Dick Lugar, who has sponsored, he along with Evan Bayh and others, the DREAM Act. And that is that if you've been here in this country, you've been a student, and you have been promoting yourself with education, that you have an opportunity, a pathway for citizenship. I believe in that. And so I think that would probably have been very helpful and will continue to be helpful in your situation. And that where you have been building and you have been promoting the greatness of our society and continue to do that, the DREAM Act would help you. So I would go on to Senator Lugar and Evan Bayh's website and look under the DREAM Act or Google the DREAM Act, and you'll find what it's intended to do and how that would help promote citizenship for individuals like you and others. And then share it with others, because the same way it affects you, it affects others and our loved ones and our brothers and sisters. And on the last note, in terms of my philosophical way of how we should deal with immigration toward the future and towards all, is this, is that the immigration issue and debate, in terms of Mexican nationals, it is estimated there are 12 million illegal Mexican nationals. They're not going to deport 12 million Mexican nationals back to Mexico. And you can go on and on in different hypotheticals or different ways that it may be viewed or not be viewed. But my philosophical stance on immigration is this, is that unless we treat the immigration issue as a human issue, we will never get it right. If we treat it based upon statistics and based upon who's different, we'll never get it right, because unless we treat it the way God would want us to treat it, and that is by respecting others as a human issue. This country has recently been deporting and separating mothers and fathers from children who were born here. That's not right. You can't do that. You can't break up a family and still say that that's justice. You can't deport somebody because they were not born here and their families have been here. This country has gone through a period in which families were separated. Families were taken apart from each other, and has not provided something that we look back with pride. So as we look forward, we must look at the immigration issue as a human issue, a religious issue, and how can we move forward with it.
Thank you.
I know we're low on time, but Secretary, if you could just make some comments about the cultural and green
Yeah.
environmental issues.
But in order to answer her question, I just got to have two tag points. If you were writing me as Indiana Secretary of State, I'm going to have Alex follow up with me and get his card. You've been writing the wrong Secretary of State. Okay, well, just to clear that up. And I'm not trying to dodge the question, but it's the point that this is all federal law, and there's very little that we can do now. That doesn't prevent me from having a personal opinion. And I agree. I have to get going, so I have to talk now. But I'll be quick, or else I'll get the cane. You see? The rule of law has to be upheld as well, and I sense frustration in your question with regard to that. It absolutely is a human issue, but I think there are solutions if we get to them, we get through the politics of them, that upholds the rule of law, keeps people in terms of their rank and status and getting into this country the right way, without being denigrated by people who've done it the wrong way. If we are nothing if we are not a country of laws, and I truly believe in that. Secondly, tactically, on the immigration issue, the H-1N1 visa issue really needs to be visited. Every time I see a congressman, and you should as well, talk about the H-1N1, because there are not enough of those visas are being... I think I have a touch of the flu. Excuse me, thank you, H-1B. You understand that now. All right, that's it for immigration. On the Muslim arts, excuse me, if you feel, and it's an accurate assumption, that there is not a fair representation of the contribution of the Muslims in Indiana history, I will take that issue by letter and personally to the Indiana State Museum. They don't answer to me, but again, redistricting, they don't answer to me, but we won't stop there. I want that fairly represented at our State Museum. I can go that far at least. And then the green jobs. If you're a conservative, which I am, I believe we should also conserve our energy. I mean, that is not a political issue to me. In terms of rehabbing buildings so that they're green, it has to make economic sense. And that's what would always drive me. Yes, we need to conserve. Can it be done? Economic doesn't make economic sense. And is there data to back that up? Thank you.
Thank you. Any last final questions? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you so much for bringing this issue of waste district. I personally have interest in it. I will share with you, but I've always had empathy that it will not get changed. But I appreciate you bringing that issue up now. But my feeling has always been that it has been always on a party line. So I want to do a quick litmus test here. I know the sheriff spoke about it, but I really want to understand that whatever the secretary has just proposed, you as a Democrat, do you agree with what I know you said you agree with the redistricting too, but some of the redistricting and the plan suggestion that the secretary made, does that gel with you as a Democrat?
Redistricting?
Yes, sir.
Well, I applaud the Secretary of State's involvement in this debate, because I think we should debate the issue of redistricting, that it represents the wishes and serving the people, not those to get reelected. So to that extent, I agree with that. We probably differ on the ID bill, but on the redistricting, it's going to come to this, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what I believe, how the debate will ultimately end. I think that our Secretary of State is right that they're saying to him, look, you don't have any legal or statutory participation in this. And he said, sure I do. I'm elected by the people, and I'm going to speak up on that. And so I applaud him for that. And I applaud him for bringing information and debate to the table. But here's where it's going to end, I think, where as they say, the rubber will hit the road. And this is what we do every day. Trust. Where the two parties trust each other that this system will provide for a better outcome. When we trust one another, then we can be friends. You do not have a friend that you do not trust. And until they come with a system, and I haven't seen this here, and in this case, it might be called verified trust. They may not necessarily be friends. I'm sure that they are at the end of the day. They're all fine people and want to be great individuals, I believe, and charitable. But until the system provides verified trust, because the governor of the state of Indiana gets to redistrict the congressional district. The Indiana Senate majority will redistrict its Senate boundary line. And the Indiana House, which are Democrats, the Senate Republican majority, Democrats in the Indiana House, until the three of the different segments of this redistricting say, okay, we have a system we believe will be fair and verifiably trustworthy, then we will have a system. If we do not, then they will revert back to the way it's always been.
Just to respond, to add on to that from a process standpoint only, the redistricting will be done just like every other bill is done. So the maps take the form of a bill, and they go through the same process that every other bill does. And what the sheriff's pointing out is that different caucuses in the chambers are led by different parties. But in the end, like every other bill, this bill will end up on the governor's desk. So in that sense, he has a vote in this. He's already said publicly that he looks forward to only signing a bill that looks something like the concepts I brought up. So that's kind of made this all real. Now, just like every other bill, a veto, if he chose to do that because it didn't look right, can be overridden by the legislature. Right? So that's by a majority of the legislature. So that's how this will ultimately play out. And I think ultimately, it will be good government versus the status quo.
Secretary, Sheriff, I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you so much for joining us. We were humbled by your presence. We appreciate everything you've done for us and for Indiana's Muslims. Thank you for valuing us enough to come here today, and we appreciate you. Please join me in applauding them.